Hello there, friends, brothers, sisters, enemies. Glad some of you are watching, enemies. You're not my enemy, but apparently I'm your enemy. But anyway, Ken Graves here with GodSword. August 27th, the year 2024. Our journey continues, and I recognize that it's been a few days since I've uploaded. I took the Lord's Day off for my family, and no teaching or upload on Monday, yesterday. Today being Tuesday, I know I'm behind. My life at present is, well, it's challenging, a challenging time doing this build and everything else that's going on. And I added to that, doing some narrating as well early in the morning, doing a book for Seth Gruber at present. And this has been a challenging time this whole summer for this study, but the study does continue despite the interruptions with Amos chapter 3, third chapter of Amos. I remind you that Amos identified himself as a sheep keeper. He identifies himself as a man he's a farmer, a herdsman. He is not sort of the professional clergyman, not a professional anything, but tender of the flock of God, and the Spirit of God moved upon him. I have a growing understanding, and again, it's quite partial still because of the fact that I don't speak Hebrew. I realize there are the poetic and truly artistic nature of the messages from the prophets. It kind of goes over me, and along with all my other English speakers. I guess it's not necessary for us to recognize the art. But I've come to realize in recent years that the prophets of Israel were, so many of them were true artists and poets. They were pouring out their soul in the most artistic fashion. So many of them, it would seem, the Old Testament prophets had a lot more in common with sort of a Holy Spirit empowered Bob Dylan or Matisyahu. There are a number, pick one. There's some truly brilliant artists, descendants of Abraham. Anyway, Amos is among them. And he pours out his soul in Amos chapter 3, verse 1. Hear this word which Yahweh has spoken against you, sons of Israel, against the entire family which he brought up from the land of Egypt, saying. And so he will then make some logical and reasonable points with regard to Israel's accountability, in that they are a people that God did all of this for, that he brought them up out of the land of Egypt. Verse 2, you only have I known among all the families of the earth, therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. So you and only you, God's unique relationship with Israel, with Abraham's descendants, God's unique covenant relationship that he has with them, makes them more accountable. Even as I maintain the unique covenant relationship that America had in its youth with Yahweh, God of Israel, makes us more accountable, the heirs of that covenant, and all of the blessing connected to it. God says, therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. And he asks these reasonable, sort of rhetorical questions, beginning in verse 3, do two men walk together unless they've made an appointment or an agreement? The two men walk together if they haven't come to some agreement. It's a rhetorical question. Does a lion roar in the forest when it has no prey? When a lion has no prey, the lion is quiet, stalking. Does a young lion give forth its voice from its den unless it's captured something? Does a bird fall into a trap on the ground when there's no bait in it? Again, the answer to all of these is the same. Does a trap spring up from the earth when it captures nothing at all? If the trumpet is blown in a city, will not the people tremble? The trumpet, it sends a shudder through every heart because it's a sound of alarm. It's a sound calling to action, calling to war. If a calamity happens in a city, has not Yahweh done it? So all of those previous, of these sort of six reasonable, rhetorical questions, all lead you to that final one. That if there is, in fact, calamity happening in the city, has not Yahweh done it? Did this happen accidentally? Did something slip by God's protection? I want you to think about that with regard to the times that our own nation has been severely humbled. We've been attacked, whether it's Pearl Harbor or what we refer to as 9/11. You cannot deny that God did not stop it, that God had allowed it. Such things. Verse 7, surely Lord Yahweh does nothing unless he reveals his secret counsel to his slaves, the prophets. Now, that is not to say that there aren't things hidden to us. God revealed so much to his prophets, yet still kept it a mystery. Like the church, the gospel itself, not the gospel so much as the church, that the gospel was going to go to the whole world, that the plan of God was bigger than just the covenant people, that God would send this message of the Jewish Messiah to the Gentile nations, and so many would come to him, and a people would come to exist that was unknown, that was hidden. There are things that was things that were hidden, and were later revealed. But God does both. In fact, the Lord with parables, just like prophecies. A parable reveals and conceals a truth at the same time. The same parable that reveals conceals. In the 4th chapter of Mark, the Lord answered the question, why do you speak in parables? And I'll summarize and paraphrase his answer with, so that people could not get it if they don't want to. He made it possible for us to not get it. He's made it possible for us to not believe, even as he has made it possible for us to believe. Our faith is, in fact, justifiable. Well, God does reveal his secret counsel to his slaves, the prophets. And verse 8, a lion has roared, who will not fear? The Lord Yahweh has spoken, who can but prophesy? So that is the sheep keeper Amos saying, a lion roared. And Yahweh has spoken, who can but prophesy? That God is the victorious lion. Verse 9, make it heard on the citadels in Ashdod, and on the citadels in the land of Egypt, and say, Ashdod, a Philistine town, well known, Philistine town in those days. So in a very real sense, calling both the Philistines and the Egyptians to witness. And say, gather yourselves on the mountains of Samaria and see the great confusions within her and the oppressions in her midst. God calls the Philistines and the Egyptians to come and stand, so to speak, on the mountains of Samaria and look over at the sin of his people. I believe the nations of the world are doing that now with regard to America. And I recognize we are not in the same sense his covenant people as Israel was uniquely. However, we have a history. We have a heritage because of the founders, because of their faith. And early American faith does, in fact, connect us to the God of Israel. And now we're guilty of so much madness and so much of what here the LSB translates it as confusion and oppression. Confusion and oppression. The oppression of the poor. The confusion of all of our sexuality, our sexual identities, the confusion of our children, state-sponsored, state-sanctioned confusion of our children. Anyway, verse 10, but they do not know how to do what is right, declares Yahweh. These who hoard up violence and devastation in their citadels. Therefore, thus says Lord Yahweh, an adversary, even one surrounding the land, will pull down your strength from you, and your citadels will be plundered. Again, what Amos prophesies will be fulfilled within 4 decades of his prophesying it. The Assyrian invasion of the northern kingdom will bring about all of this. In verse 12, it says, Yahweh, just as the shepherd delivers from the lion's mouth a couple of legs or a piece of an ear, so will the sons of Israel inhabiting Samaria be delivered with the corner of a bed and the cover of a couch. That is a description that if you are a shepherd and you are tending, caring for another man's sheep, and it's torn by wild beasts, you have to bring evidence of that. Just whatever's left, remnants, the evidence that the lions got it, and that's exactly what God is saying through Amos would be the case with the northern kingdom. Only a remnant. Just a leg, a couple of legs, a piece of an ear. Just what is left, the remains. And so will the sons of Israel inhabiting Samaria be delivered. And then verse 13, hear and testify against the house of Jacob, declares Lord Yahweh, the God of hosts. For in that day I will punish Israel's transgressions. I will also punish the altars of Bethel. The horns of the altar will be cut in pieces. They fall to the ground. I will also strike the winter house together with the summer house. The houses of ivory will also perish, and the great houses will come to an end, declares Yahweh. Summer house, the winter house, houses of ivory. The archaeology from that particular period of time reveals a great disparity between the very wealthy and the very poor in the northern kingdom. At the intersection of the continents, the opportunity to trade between Europe, Africa, and Asia put them in a position where they could know great prosperity, and there were times where they did. And yet there were those who had the sort of attitude that they could trust in their riches. They could put their confidence in their wealth. And they did. False confidence. Whether it was a house of ivory, summer or winter, the big rich house or the little poor house, judgment of God came in fulfillment of Amos's words. Again, within 4 decades, a little more than 30 years from the time that he wrote them until their fulfillment. May God have mercy upon our nation. May God have mercy upon us. What is your study for today? We'll continue, as the Lord allows, the Lord willing, as I also continue this build and everything else that the Lord has me doing. If I can answer a question, I'll do my best. I think I'm slipping behind on answering emails. You can email me at kengraves@ccbangor.org. And that's your study for today. Grace and peace to you all, every one of you.